Hi everyone. It's been a long time since I've uploaded a video, and I think this may be the first video that I'm ever recording with my face on it, which is interesting. My channel historically has been about speedrunning, like various kind of video game ones. I don't think I've ever uploaded anything about Tetris, which is kind of what I've been very much into the past couple of year or two, maybe something like that. And so something that I saw in the community, just this is for NES Tetris specifically, was that when trying to do analysis for what's a good piece placement and what's a bad one, the choices that people were making seemed to be informed more from intuition, more from like, here's my idea of what a good position may be, and as well, sort of the analysis kind of comes in assuming that we know what the piece sequence is going to be later. In NES Tetris, obviously, we only get your current piece and the next piece, and that's all you know. So when I was looking at these, watching these analyses, I was thinking, what can we do to bring this kind of more accurately towards the math, towards the probability that we want, that we actually know that the game has. And so Sharky, I think, is the person who has done most of these analyses that I've seen, and they're really good. But I feel like there's something lacking in those videos. And so I kind of chose this moment in this video specifically because in the commentary, Sharky and his fellow commentator are saying, oh, I wish I knew what the kind of next pieces are going to be. It'd be really good to know those. And so I'd like to kind of show the tool that I've built that I think not necessarily solves this problem, but at least alleviates some of it, makes things a little bit easier, and allows you to actually figure out, is this placement better than this one, based on a couple of assumptions. So if I do this, here is my tool. This is, I have been calling it the Tetris Planner. May come up with a better name for it at some point, but right now that's what it is. And so what we have is basically a blank grid. You can kind of see that this starts to happen. The idea being that we need to set up what the stack looks like. So in this situation, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 blocks up. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, and then you can basically follow it along. At some point, I'd like to make some improvements, so you can basically just give it a screenshot and it will figure it out for you and just kind of put the grid straight on. But right now, I'm aiming to just hopefully get this into people's hands. Is that right? Okay. So I think I've missed a column here somewhere. Ah. Then it goes to 3, and then to 1, and then here. Okay, and then, so once you do that, you press space, and it moves you on to the next. Toggle individual blocks, like right here, we need to kind of get rid of this one, and that puts us there. What is the playable piece? We see that it is a J piece, and the next is an L. So once you've done those, we basically have the very initial option, like what would your first placement be? And so, of course, so what you can do when you go onto this is basically navigate around, move these as normal. Pressing D will kind of hard drop, and space locks it into place. So I think that there's kind of this option, which, you know, is, I think, fairly simple. And then the idea, once you've placed these two, we're now going to go through each of the individual pieces and see what we would do with each of them. Then, when we've kind of got all of those, we can calculate what's the probability that it would be a line piece, an O piece, and then you can kind of add all of those up and figure out, hey, what's my likely situation going to be once I've placed whatever the piece after that one is, and you can kind of compare options against each other. So I'm not a very, compared to a lot of these people, I'm not a very good Tetris player, so these may be bad placements. I would have to trust you to make what you consider the best placement to be. So in this situation, I could kind of go down here, which I think would be fine. Yeah, so now we go to it. Obviously, it takes the line away because we're saying, well, what if we didn't have the line and we got the square instead? So I would almost certainly put it there. And we know that next we're going to have to figure out a place for the t. Maybe this works. That. And yeah, so you can, with this quite quickly go through. And then the problem with this situation is that you really don't have any good place for the z piece. So I think putting it there with the aim to spin something into it later is not a problem. So then you can kind of see that we've got this option. And it kind of shows you a bit of what it looks like, placing the first and then the second piece. Now, having one option doesn't really do that much. So how about we go to add another option? So what could we do? We could put that here maybe. And that doesn't really give anything too useful, does it? Okay, I'm just going to go through, try this out. But yeah, so I think, in this situation, we can take a fair guess that the first option I did is going to work out better for us than the second option. But let's compare them. So what you do is select both of these, compare both options, and then this will kind of show you what happens. You don't want to know too much information about it. I just want to say which one results in a better stack for me. And I think that I would prefer to have the top stack. And again, in this situation, I think I'd probably prefer the top stack again. It's much cleaner, you're Tetris ready. Now, this one, you've still got the drop here, but you do kind of end up a lot flatter on the right-hand side, whereas this kind of keeps you bumpier. I think maybe I'd go the bottom. I'm not really sure on that one. I think this one, you've got to go top again. Yeah, I think I've kind of chosen a bad example because I definitely just prefer the first option in pretty much all situations. Yeah, and I think I'd still probably prefer the top. And so what this is, hey, you chose option one. You think that this is the best option. So that is really kind of the simplest version of what this does. I could then go back and say, okay, that was option two. I'll add a delete button here soon enough. But let's add a third one. And let's explore what happens if I do end up doing that one, because that actually cleans the board up really well. And so if I'm doing these, yeah, kind of scared to show anybody how bad I can be, but there we go. So obviously you do need to kind of take into account that in some places you'll get Tetrises and you'll get extra lines, so they can be really, really preferable. But you can keep that in mind and generally have a fairly good comparison here. So I think I'd probably prefer the top option. Oh, you can click these as well instead of just doing the buttons. Obviously, if they're equal, you should say that they're equal and you don't mind which one you'd have. Yeah, I think I'd probably prefer the bottom one here, top one here, top one here. Probably bottom one here, and bottom one here as well. Okay, so still option one, probably the best situation here. You can go through these, figure out ways to get Tetris ready in 2 moves, or potentially 3 moves. It could be 2 gets you almost there, and then the third one, 4 of the 7 possible pieces end up getting you Tetris ready, and that would be better than 3 of the possible pieces. That kind of thing. What this also does, it doesn't just kind of say, okay, each of the 7 possibilities has exactly 1 in 7 chances. I've put into here the actual probabilities according to how the code piece generation works. So there's, obviously a bias against getting the same piece twice in a row. I'm actually going to come out with another video because I've been doing a lot of analysis into exactly how the piece sequences work. There is actually a slight bias against line pieces that mean that they appear less than 1/7 of the time. And when there's certain things, the O piece has twice the likelihood of appearing twice in a row than all the other pieces. I think S has that same property as well. there's a lot of interesting stuff with this, and I actually would like to talk a little bit about how that affects CTWC, because the same piece mod that's used actually affects the probabilities there, and I think there's something that may need to change in the community to make it a more accurate representation of the game. But this is the tool. You can find it I'll put the link in the description, but it's just at jpika.github.io/Tetris Tetris-planner. This is still very early days. The UI is fairly clunky, but I'm working to kind of improve the styling of things. But I really just want to get it into people's hands and let people have a go with it, have a try, find out if it's useful, find out what may need to change, and see where we go from there. So thanks very much.